This is an SM Media production. Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Rangers Assessment, your exclusive SM Media Rangers podcast. I'm Scotland Pike. It's always a pleasure to be your host, and I'm delighted to welcome back onto the podcast. A pleasure to welcome on Craig Rae.
Thanks very much for having me, Scott. Yeah, it's good to be on, talking about good Rangers stuff. It's been a pretty positive last sort of 4 weeks or so. So, no, I'm excited to be here and crack on with it, mate.
No, it's always a pleasure, mate. It's always good to get you on. I remember the first podcast was the start of the season. You were on, and there was a degree of positivity there, but it was blind optimism, I think. But now we're a month into the Clement regime. We've seen 6 wins and a draw, for example, that a step in the right direction. It's a different level of positivity, but it's a positivity where you can look at evidence to say Rangers are going in the right direction.
I completely agree. I mean, looking back at that now at the start of the season, to be fair, I wouldn't say I was Michael Beale's biggest fan. I think obviously at the start you're happy that he gets a job and you're going to support the manager and whatnot. But for me, the proper alarm bell started to ring after that semi-final last year. Even though it wasn't his fault, it just kind of it got to the point where I was thinking every bad result, we always seem to have an excuse lined up for him.
Yeah.
And then obviously when it got to the Kilmarnock game, well, pre-season was bad enough. The Kilmarnock game, that's when you're thinking, God, you're basically another result away for everything happening. And then obviously the Celtic game happens, sort of troddles on for a couple of weeks as we knew he would, and then after that Aberdeen game, the inevitable happened. And I think the way that Clement's managed to turn that around has been quite remarkable, to be honest with you. And the last 2 Rangers managers that have came in, Gio came in, was relatively positive. Obviously, we just won the league. We weren't doing amazing under Gerrard in these last few months, but we were still top of the league. He came in a decent position. Beale came into a pretty negative position, but at the same time, the players just came off the back of a Europa League final, a Scottish Cup win. But this is definitely like the worst sort of managerial takeover it's been. You're probably talking about since Kishinger, and about that time where the whole thing's just been an absolute mess for a couple of years now. At least the last couple of managers came into some sort of optimism, maybe the season before, but we've now went over a year without a trophy. Hopefully that will change in the coming weeks, but it's definitely good to get a wee bit of positivity back.
The kind of big thing with Beale was the big games, like the Celtic games in particular. He didn't win it. The only one was a dead rubber. He didn't win the cup semi-finals. He didn't win a final. Goes out to PSV. There was no body of work you could say, right, no matter what. Like with Gio, you had his Europa League run of, right, he can tactically be ready to shoot for a big game. He obviously won the Scottish Cup. Beale just never had that. And the one thing that didn't help Beale, and this has been a symbol, and I want to touch on this later on, but the signings to get the freedom he had to make all the signings he did. Some I think have been okay. I think particularly the goalkeeper, I think, has been an outstanding bit of business. I think there's some that are going to be really good, but there's been a couple, we know who we're talking about, there's been a couple that have been disasters so far. And because he had that freedom, like with Gio, he had, like with the signings he made, we all thought that they aren't really his players. But with Beale, we couldn't have that argument. They were the players Beale wanted, and they didn't deliver so far. So what was in terms of rebuild, and we spoke about it in the first podcast, that it was a big rebuild. It was a rebuild that needed to happen. But now when we got to Beale, it was such a slow start, 7 points behind, losing 3 of your first 7 league games, been out of the Champions League. It just wasn't going to last, and the signings they will symbolise him for the rest of his managerial career. I don't care if Dessers and Lammers go on to be superb Rangers players. He will not escape that. he will not escape the start he had on with the players.
No, he certainly can't escape that start that he had. That's the thing, though, Scott. I mean, obviously, we know that the two that everyone's obviously going to talk about is Lammers and Dessers. They could still turn out to be decent Rangers players. And the thing with Michael Beale with me that always got me is I always thought he was a decent enough coach. Although then again, you were kind of questioning that, like through his managerial career at Rangers at times. But you just felt that he never had the man management skills. Now, I know the chat so far has obviously been, well, he shouldn't have been given the free rein to sign all the players. Okay, we were saying that recently, people are still saying it now, but we could still technically go on to win a treble this year with this same squad of players. Mm-hmm. Could it just be a case that Michael Beale, maybe he did sign the right players, he just didn't know how to utilise them properly? Because we need to remember in January as well, he also signed Cantwell and Raskin. Raskin, I know, was kind of in the mix before, but Cantwell, I think, was definitely his signing. That kind of came from left field. So he's kind of had sort of mini successes like that, like Butland, and Dessers and Lammers could go on to be good Rangers players this season. Kind of a wee bit similar to like Pedro Caixinha, because he was obviously rubbish for Rangers, but he signed Ryan Jack, he signed Alfredo Morelos, he brought in a couple of players that actually turned out to be guys that would be key in a 55th League Championship win, the European run to Seville, and Morelos is obviously our top European goal scorer of all time. So, I just think, for me, Michael Beale, it was more about his man management skills. I just don't think they're there. I think the whole Hagi situation just kind of sums that up. Hagi comes out and makes comments that I don't think are disrespectful. I think he's basically just saying, I'm fit, I'm ready to play. If I'm not being played, it's the manager's decision, not my decision.
Mm-hmm.
But was it 5 days later? See you later.
Yeah.
So, obviously, they have been bad so far. You can't get away from that, because right now, we're I think 8 points behind with a game in hand. Everything else seems to be going okay, though, out with the league. But you never know. We could actually turn this around and actually have an amazing season. So there could be a lot of similar Pedro Caixinha vibes with Michael Beale in that sense.
The thing that's got me with Clement so far, and these were the kind of two things that I really wanted a Rangers, the new manager, to come in and really implement, which I think's been missing for a long time, is a style of play which lifts the support. So you're not going like I can't think of a Rangers game this season where I've been on the edge of my seat and positive about the performance, and I just wanted that. I wanted a manager to come in and go for, make the support want to watch Rangers. Like we're in an international break just now. The last one, obviously, with the kind of dominance of the managerial appointment, but you weren't really looking forward to Rangers coming back because the style of play and the performance wasn't there. That was the first thing I think Clement had to come in and implement. But the second thing I think was more important. He had to get a tune of what was there, because he can't go in and go, right, I've got, do you know what I mean? He's not got the advantage of coming in during the summer where he can just change it straight away and bring in his own players. He has to work with what was there. And I want to kind of pick this up in a few minutes, but one thing that really caught my eye is just the certain players who in the past kind of 4 or 5 months just haven't been at the races are now, just because there's a level of improvement and because there's a style of what they want to do, you've just seen a lift. And that is just, you can build a support instantly with that. And that's what I think Clement has done so far. And I know we're a month in, and we can't just say, oh, everything's hunky-dory again, because it's not. He needs to win a trophy. He needs to get the gap closer than what it was when he came in. That's what he needs to do, and that's a long-term plan. But right now, just in terms of the short term, being a month in, he's done those two things in an early space of time.
No, definitely. I think that was part of the reasoning with the appointment of Clement. Obviously, there was a few names in the hat. It clearly came down to having Kevin Muscat. I think that the board had to look at it from a perspective of, we're in October here. The season is not done. We can still win 2 trophies. We can still have a run in Europe. Whilst we're 7 points behind, like I've seen Rangers teams come back for 7 points behind after the second Old Firm game in January.
Yeah.
I've seen Celtic come back for 7 points behind in March. So you can't just, give up the league or give up the cups or whatever. So I seen someone on Twitter post around about the time Clement was appointed that this is a great appointment for the players, because what they'll do is they'll get the initial lift for 6 or 7 months or so, and then they'll throw their toys at the pram again, like this whole sort of leadership group that we all talk about. For me, actually, that's kind of the perfect scenario, because if you can get a lift out of Lundstrom and Barisic for 6 or 7 months, that's great, because they're out of contract in the
Yeah,
summer. Just don't re-sign them.
yeah,
Get the lift out of them for 6 or 7 months, throw the carrot in front of their stick, and don't re-sign them, so they've not got a chance to let you down again. And that is something that, obviously, it's great that he is getting a tune out of the players, but I'm always the type of person that thinks, my God, imagine you done that a few months ago. And I understand that, like Michael Beale, he probably was the best manager to work under. Maybe Giovanni Van Bronckhorst at times for some players, but I do think a lot of these senior players do have a habit of throwing people under the bus. And whilst obviously Michael Beale clearly had to go, he wasn't the only person at fault for the way that results were going at Rangers. So I think for me, it's kind of it could be a perfect scenario. Get a lift out of these senior players, get them going for the rest of the season, and then just for me, I would say, all right, thanks for that.
yeah.
Time to go. I think that would be a perfect scenario, to be honest.
Yeah, and we've seen that as well. Obviously, like after Bill left, was with the embarrassment of Limassol, when I still maintain that those players were a disgrace that night. Just the way
Oh,
that they didn't have
absolutely.
they didn't want to pick themselves up, and I felt for Davis that night. But one thing that's really impressed me about Clement so far, and I want to get your thoughts on this, and we've spoke about this in the past on air and off air, the importance of setting your tone immediately in terms of what you want to communicate. Now, I don't think Gio was the best in terms of communicating. Beale was bad at it. He would say way too much. Clement from the get go has just been very direct. He's been very thorough in what he wants to say. But the thing I want to address is the injury situation, because almost immediately he was calling out what has, to me, a disgrace. Like, there's so much that technology that can improve injuries that we don't use in the dressing room and things like that. That to me is a disgrace. But I commend Clement for coming out and saying that from the get go, because the club need to move into that direction. And I think already we've got a manager there who can. The first thing he's looked at is, why is this team picking up so many injuries? Why is Kamar Roof getting injured all the time? Let's see if we can improve that. Let's send him to a specialist and see if we can improve that. A week later, he's on the bench. Ryan Jack, I think, looks just, do you know what I mean? They can play 3 games in a week. We've not been able to say
Yeah,
that for 5 years. Just things like that, just small changes, just small observations, I think are just really, really encouraging.
absolutely. I mean, you touched on it there, that this Cairo chamber that they all talk about. I mean, why? I'm not going to pretend I'm a fitness guru here, right? I think people can quite clearly see that I'm no, right? But for God's sake, Martin Bain was using the Cairo chamber in the Sunderland Till I Die documentary. So if Martin Bain knows how to use it, I'm pretty sure that primed athletes know how to use it as well. Like, the fitness issue's been there, it seems, under a couple of managers, Beale and obviously Van Bronckhorst. But I think people maybe thought that it would go back to normal when Beale came back, but it seemed as if Beale was maybe putting the players through too much in the summer, because I remember, spoke about it earlier, Hadji came out, I think, in that very interview and said, it was like the hardest pre-season I've ever
Yeah,
had. And I don't think that was just because he was coming back from a long-term injury. I think there was a lot of players that were saying, oh, we're really, properly going for it. But I think it's about balance. What Clement is really good at doing is getting certain like spells and stuff like that out of players. And I've always kind of been in the belief that if you're good enough to start on the bench, you should be good enough to start the game. But let's be honest, it's modern day football. That can't always be the case.
mm-hmm.
So what I think's really interesting is he's slowly but surely building players back up to a particular level of fitness. So he'll bring Cantwell on for 10 minutes, and then he'll bring him on for 20 minutes, then half an hour, then he'll start the game, then he'll take him up. Then he was doing the same with Danilo as well and stuff
Yeah,
like that. So I thought that was really interesting. And then the comments that he made the last couple of days as well about Sunday 12 o'clock. We should maybe move the games to say 5 o'clock on a Sunday instead of 12. And he says that people will say, "Oh, what's the difference between 4 and 5 hours?" But he is looking at that, saying that 4 or 5 hours can make all the difference in terms of a player recovery. And let's be honest, at this level of football, it is the finest, beyond finest of margins that make those differences.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the fact that the guy's looking at the small things, the wee things, the margins, those things that actually change games over a long period of time, that's something that's a real big positive for me.
And you mentioned there about like Cantwell coming back in and Danilo, and he has like, I think, like with Beale in particular, like as soon as a player was back, they were straight in because they were so important to the setup. But we've seen with Danilo and Cantwell, as you say, they've been carefully kind of. Cantwell. I don't think Cantwell and Danilo played 90 minutes since they've been back in, which I don't think's a bad thing because you have this like Raskin. Like Raskin was injured, came back a little bit too early because there was nobody else there, and he picks up a knock again. And I'm not saying that that's Clement's fault. I'm just saying he's probably been back to as soon as it was because there was nobody else to play his position. But I think when Raskin comes back the next time, it will be just a careful process, and that's important of building a squad. Now, Ryan Jack, I don't think Ryan Jack came on tonight for Scotland as we're recording this, but I'm a nervous wreck about Ryan Jack being away in international duty because he's played so many games. But also, I'm taking a positivity to the fact that he's played more in the past few weeks. He's playing a different position. Do you know what I mean? He's playing the same position, but he's playing a different way. So there has to be some level of improvement in terms of what he's trying to do. Now, the big kind of thing that jumped out to me was he said that everybody was in the same training program. Now, you can't have Leon Balogun doing the same training program as a Ross McCausland or a Bailey Rice. You can't have that. That's nonsense. But now he's come in and all reports says he's changed that and he's got everybody in an individual training program. It's things like that, as you say about the Sunday 12 o'clock thing. Now, it is ridiculous that you can finish a game at 12 o'clock at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night and be playing at 12 o'clock on a Sunday. But we're never going to, I get where he's coming from, that's never going to change. You're not going to change that because Sky hold all the power, therefore make all the decisions. But just hearing these wee things that we've not heard in a long time is just a big difference. And I keep talking about that under Clement. There seems to be a difference in just how the club are viewing football. Now, that sounds really simple, but it's been so simplistic for so long. Just these new, fresh ideas just seem to be different. And that is just what I've been asking for years. Just a different view of how football is played, because football isn't the same as it was 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Science has changed, diet's changed. But Rangers haven't changed in that regard. Do you know what I mean? I don't think they have. In terms of that, I don't think the club is in a better place than it was 10 years ago from the point of view of health, fitness, nutrition. And now I'm already hearing things from Clement that he's went in there and thought, this club isn't modern. The way we set up isn't modern. Let's change that. And it looks as if he's already doing that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's weird because I actually think that, I know we're going to talk about the accounts later, but I do genuinely think that the club as a whole is in a pretty healthy position.
Yeah.
And I think 3 out of the 4 pillars, 2 out of the 4 are doing excellently well. The player trading one, we're getting towards that now. The 4th one that isn't actually doing well is the most important one, and that's football.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? That's the football department's the most important department at a football club. And it's just, it has seemed to be the last few years anyway, kind of this whole maybe jobs for the boys, guys that have maybe been there for a while. We've no refreshed things. We went back, even guys like John Park and stuff like that, who, all due respect to him, but I mean, the guy was scouting for Neil Lennon under Celtic in 2010. So, I'm not saying that he's doing a good job or a bad job, right? But from just that point of view, you're thinking, why are you getting in a guy who done well 12 or 13 years ago? It's like, as you say, football's changed, times have changed. And it's not just this whole modern aspect that Clement's bringing it to. For me, it's just basic professionalism, which I think the football department has been lacking probably since Gerrard left. I mean, I say that's pretty disrespectful, I think, to Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. I think it was, but he probably wasn't given the right tools to do that by the sporting director at the time. And then obviously Michael Beale comes in, he's there for a few months under Beale, and then Wilson left as well. So I just think that it's been very backwards thinking the last few years. Clement's came in with a fresh set of eyes. As you say, he's looking at it thinking this club, in a football sense anyway, isn't modern enough. They're not doing the right things properly, and he's in to fix it. And what I really like about him, and this is probably my favourite thing about Clement, he's not came in and just went, oh Christ, everything's bad here, what am I going to do? It's always about the positive aspect. It's about how we're going to get there. He's kind of like, that boss in your work who, say for example, you are doing a really bad job you don't know how to do something, or a teacher at school when you're really struggling at a subject or whatever. He's the teacher, he's the boss coming up to you and saying, look, I know you're struggling now, but don't worry, you're going to get there in the end. We're going to pass you your exams. We're going to make sure that you get that promotion. You're going to hit those targets. And it's reassuring. It's something that the players probably haven't heard for a while in terms of, right, okay, we know things are bad now, they've been bad, but we're going to get there. And as his catchphrase has been so far, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, and it is a marathon, but already he's done more than Bale in terms of winning a big game. Do you know what I mean? He's got Rangers to a final. He's got Rangers to a final. He's improved players as well. Like if you'd said to me 2 months ago Scott Wright would be quite an important part of this setup, I would have said that's because I was of the belief, and I'm still to the degree of the belief that he's not Rangers quality, but we've seen in the past, and I think Rodgers is a good example across the city. He can get so much more out of an average player by just, as you say, just giving them something to work with, giving them a way of playing and implementing a level of trust that I don't think Beale ever did. The likes of a Scott Wright, I think Lundstrom's come on leaps and bounds just in the past few weeks, and he's not that guy who's slowing the game down and, do you know what I mean, taking 10 touches before he makes a forward pass. And even Barisic in the past few weeks, and people know how I feel about Borna Barisic, but he's getting to the byline more. Goldson's a bit more like, he's not just, the first thought is not playing an 80-yard diagonal, still playing it, but it's do you know what I mean? It's not a case of crossing for 50 yards out because there's nothing else on. There's a style, there's a structure. Cantwell playing off the right. Now, I don't think that's his long term. I would hope it's not the long term plan for Todd Cantwell, but just this flexibility in terms of formation. Lawrence coming in at the weekend, I thought Lawrence was excellent. I think McCausland coming in as well. Danilo, I thought Dessers was pretty good on Sunday as well. Just things like that. Just seeing all this level of improvement. Seema, the work rate of him in the past few weeks has been nothing short of phenomenal. Just having, like, I mean, I mentioned kind of 9-10 players there. And if you can get them all kind of singing off the same hymn sheet and having what you want them to do, I mean, it sounds really, really like silly, but anything's possible if you can just get those players linked up. And I don't think there's been a link. Like Lundstrom used to infuriate me because his first thought was just to slow the game down. You can see, and I noticed this. That I think it was the Hibs game. I think it was the first game. Clement's on them immediately as soon as they get the ball to do something. I've not seen that in a Rangers manager, and I'm including Gerrard in this. I've not seen that in a Rangers manager in years. Maybe since Advocat, in terms of just that. Like, even I don't think Smith really was that thorough in terms of on them for the get go. Just the difference. Just I'm not going to, like, a European coach isn't always the right answer, but just a coach who knows what he wants. It's just such a difference. And I'm not saying he's immediately the best. He's not. He needs to do. You know what I mean? He needs to do it long term, but you can see a big difference just in terms of from an on-field coaching side of it, from a management side. And I think that's probably been the big thing for me, is just how quick he is just to say what he wants, and just he has a plan for everything. And that already has just jumped out to me.
Aye, I mean, he's kind of done it in a couple of times before. Obviously, he came into Monaco when they weren't doing too well, and I know it never ended well for him at Monaco, but he still got them that European qualification for a point of where they weren't going to do it. You mentioned Seaver there, Scott, and the first thought was I was at Livy on Sunday, and they're right back, I think it was Montano or something like that. He came down with cramp with like 20 minutes to go, and that was just because Seema was just running him ragged.
Yeah.
Now, this is a guy, Montano, whoever, who's, I don't think he's probably starts most games for Liverpool, but not everyone. There's been 14 or 15 league games this season, if even that. Seema's been playing like 3 games a week the whole season. He's played probably about double the amount of games that he has, and Seamus got him coming off with cramp with 20 minutes to go. That shows you the sort of levels that come on is aspiring to in terms of fitness and professionalism. And like you say, it's look, that whole getting on to the players straight away. We all love to see that, right? We all think, in a manager, we want to see a guy like Simeone, he always goes up for it and does this, that, and the next thing. All right, being animated and all that's great, but I think if you can do it in a way that's controlled in the sense of, you're going to get the right result at the end of it. In the past, managers have kind of been that sort of, the watching over sort of looking down on everything, like Walter Smith always going up to the stand, Alec Ferguson.
There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But...
no, absolutely not. But nowadays, modern, you look at the best coaches in the world now, Klopp, Guardiola, the guy, Simeone, the guys are going off their nuts for like the whole game. Probably the only one that maybe does do it that's world class is Ancelotti, but Ancelotti's just Ancelotti, isn't it? He doesn't need to move at all because he's that good. But it's the way a modern manager works, and as I say, he's doing it in a very controlled way. He's not going hell for leather and this, that, and the next thing. It's just a wee bit of urgency, and it's something that you never seen under Michael Beale. And I mean, we had we never had big moments under Michael Beale, right? But there was a couple of ones that you would think, it would get you going, like on the touchline, like for example, the late winners at Aberdeen scoring 2 goals in like the last minute. That was like his second game in charge. And he's sitting there pure raging because the players aren't playing the exact style of play that he wants, even though it's only his second game in charge, and you're never going to get it that quickly. The Celtic game at New Year, Ryan Kent scores an absolute worldie. He's just standing at the touchline doing nothing. Tav scores a penalty to put you 2-1 up. And at that point, you're thinking, Christ, the title race is on. He's not animated at all. We get through the cup final against Aberdeen, in extra time. Does he really do anything? And that was the first, that's like the first cup final he's been at as a manager and that. So in terms of A2 anyway, it's night and day. And as a guy that said to me on Sunday, it's amazing what happens when you actually bring a proper manager in it.
And that was as well with Sparta Prague as well, when it was this Rangers team in the past have had a habit of, if nothing comes off early, they'll just resort to just the desperation of throwing crosses in the Goldson 80-yarder, or just hoping that Todd or Abdallah can do something. Now, just the way that first half against Sparta Prague at Ibrox, Danilo gets his goal, Cantwell, terrific start. But it was that, like, Rangers could have been 4 or 5 up at half time, and they missed a lot of chances, but it was just 2-0 under Beale or even Gio, even Gerrard. And it would have just been set off and try and just, do you know what I mean, don't let them back into it. Now, I know it finished 2-1, but there was a hunger there to go and get more. That comes from the dugout.
No, 100%. And like you say, even Gerrard, obviously we had some great European results under him, but I think with Gerrard there was a lot of nervousness. I think maybe because the first couple of years we were just coming back into European competition, and there was a couple of times where like we went a goal up. Both games against young boys come to mind. It's like we take the lead against them, and you're kind of like what do we do now? And it's just like, just sit back for the rest of the game. And it costs us certainly in the away leg. Thankfully,
Benfica's always the one that sticks out to me. 3-1 up and
2-0 up as well.
Playing them off the park and letting them back. And Benfica are a good side, and they've a world-class striker, but just like that way, already on the come on. And I thought Sparta were pretty good second half, but I was never in doubt for that point. It was the same on Sunday as well. I can't think about the last time where I watched Rangers and thought, Rangers are really just, do you know what I mean? It's been so easy. And it's just been, no, it was just the way the first half, it wasn't, you could tell there was a side that tired out in the second half after Thursday night, but it's just that difference of routine. And that's not been a word we've been able to use for years. Routine. Mm-hmm. And that's already, I mean, we're a month in, not even 6 weeks in, and there's just, you're saying that. And you've not been able to say that for a long, long time, that things are routine.
No, you're right. And I mean, Livy on Sunday, that was the most comfortable performance I've seen in that stadium ever. And I know we won 3-0 there a couple of times actually, but even the games, it was still like wee times where Livingston maybe could have get back into it. They done absolutely nothing on Sunday. Never threatened Jack Butland once. We should have been at least 2-0 at half time. We could have won the game 5-0 quite easily. For me, that is now the next steps. It's like, right, we're getting the wins mostly sewn up relatively early.
Yeah.
Get more goals, get on it, try and get more. Like, because I think I'm saying we should have won 5-0 on Sunday, and I'll maintain that we should have. I do think if we come out of that game with a 5-0 win, that's a real proper statement win. Obviously going to Dundee and winning 5-0 was great, but I think going to Levy and maybe doing them in that way and getting a lot of goals at a place that's supposedly really difficult, I think that would have sent out a statement. But you're never going to complain with a 2-0 win there anyway, so I'll definitely take it.
No, you certainly aren't. And before we kind of move into kind of off the field stuff, I want to just mention about the signings, like the likes of that Dessers and Lammers. Lammers in particular, like even in Sunday with Dessers, I thought there was a few times now. Staying onside is not his forte, but it does something decent for the goal. Like he scores, it's a nice goal. Do you know what I mean? Lawrence plays it a terrific pass, but he's building that confidence. And I'm not saying that he's completely the finished article yet. He's nowhere near it, but he must take something for that goal. When you saw the fans on him, you were there. You obviously know better than me, but there is something there with Dessers for me.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I will say about him before anything else, the guy tries,
Yeah.
and that's the first part. You know what I mean? Like, give me a guy that tries over a guy that doesn't try most times. But the thing is, you get a lot of people like online, like saying ridiculous things like, "Oh, I would take a half-ass Morelos over, this Dessers or whatever." Now, Dessers hasn't been great since he's came into Rangers, right? I'm not saying that he has been, but we've seen rubbish Morelos last season. Dessers has got more goals than that rubbish Morelos did at this stage last season. Since Clement's come in, I've had 4 league games. Dessers has scored 3 goals. Now, you put that over a league season, that's a lot of goals, right? That's what you want your number 9 to do. Now, he was throwing goals a couple of times, and Sunday he should have had a couple more, but, he did his job, I think. He scored the goal, and he does offer you something different as well. Like, for example, the game against Prague, Danilo was just absolutely gone with all the running and stuff like that he was doing. And that's partly why Clement started Dessers on Sunday. This whole thing about fitness again.
Mm-hmm.
And like he brought Dessers on for that last 10, 15 minutes, just getting stuck in and all that into the defence, trying to keep the ball as high up the pitch as you possibly can. And if you can nick a goal, you can nick a goal. He's probably the only attacking player anyway, that we've got that can do that. And the guy's not a bad player. He's an international player. I think he was a top scorer in the Conference League a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah.
He scored goals in Holland and whatnot. He clearly isn't a bad player. Now, is there an argument that he's maybe not suited to the Scottish League? Possibly. Although that is a bit weird considering the type of striker that he is, sort of bustling, this, that, and the next thing. But I do think he can offer something. The thing that worries me with Dessers is more the price tag that we paid for him.
Yeah,
Because if
that's
you're
the
paying
thing.
£4+ million for a guy who, for me, I would give him basically like the Cedric Hitton role, if that kind of makes sense. Now, you need players like that to go and win your leagues, I agree, but
Absolutely, you do.
you don't need to be paying £4 million for them.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only part with him. Lammers, I don't know. He's even weirder than
The
Dessers
big
because
thing with Lammers for me, and I was keen to get your thoughts on this, and the conclusion I've kind of come to is there's a reason he looked the best player in pre-season, is because the intensity wasn't there. Like the intensity of other
maybe.
opposition teams wasn't there. Now I noticed this. I can't remember. It was a game under Beale. I think it might have been Motherwell at home. He was doing things to see when he had a yard of space. Some of his touches were world class, but see when he's up against see when he's got kind of 3 or 4 players round about him, he doesn't know what to do. Now, that's obviously different. There's a reason. This isn't a surprise that his numbers maybe aren't going to be good. Like he might go through the season, if he stays the season, getting 3 goals and 3 assists, but played. I think him and Butland are the only 2 players to have played in every game this season competitive. I think somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but the problem he's got, in my opinion, is that he's not going to have the big numbers to justify that. And
that's that.
I think the pre-season, I think that kind of pre-season, there was a reason why people are saying he looks the best in pre-season. But now when he's playing every game in a competitive sense, he's not getting that time to show what he can do. Now, you need to adapt. but he's not adapted over the past 4 or 5 years. His best season was 5 years ago when he was 21. Do you know what I mean? It's not a coincidence that he's on this trajectory of his numbers aren't good, because they've not been. Do you know what I mean? We can't say, "Oh, his numbers were good last year. That's the reason he was signed." All reports were he was signed because of something he's done 5 years ago when he was probably a different player. Now, you can say it's maybe been coached out of him in previous years, but I just don't see at the moment where he fits. Even under Clement. Now, I know Clement will try and get the best out of him because he has to, but even under Clement, I'm like, I don't know what he's going to do here. I don't know where he fits best in this system, because you play him as a 10, Cantwell and Lawrence aren't playing there, and I think they're your two best players for that position. You play him deeper, he's not that type of player. He's not a white. He doesn't suit the width to be, and he's not a front man. So where does he fit?
Yeah, I don't see him fitting anywhere, to be honest. If every player's fit, I think I can't even believe that he's played in that many games. Maybe he's not played in every game, but he has certainly played in 95% of them anyway.
I think he has. I think he's
if
played in every game. I think I read that.
It kind of, well, what does that tell you about our injuries then as well? Like, Cantwell's obviously been injured for a wee bit. Lawrence as well. I think if Lawrence and Cantwell are fully fit, he's not playing at all. And that's not going to be a bigger argument about what do you do in January with the likes of Alec Lowry and Yanis Hadji, if you can recall them. I don't know if we can, but I don't know where he's going to fit, to be honest. I mean, it's a weird one. Like, you do need the squad depth and stuff like that, but kind of similar to Dessers, it's like, I mean, if Lammers was like a Scott Wright, for example, who was like a squad player and he came in and he scored 3 goals, 3 assists and all that, and he was a free, we're going, all right, fine, fair enough. Like, it's kind of, maybe it's not worked out the way that you wanted to, but it's not been a disaster. This guy costs £3 million, so he needs to hit the numbers. And that's the issue that we've got. We've got one, maybe even 2 players that were signed in the summer that were signed for big money. Right now, you'd be lucky if you got even a third of that back for them. And that's ultimately what we're going to need to do to try and bring players in January. It's offload these guys, and sadly, it's very difficult to offload players. I mean, at the end of the day, if we have signed a guy in Lammers for £3 million off the back of him doing something 5 years ago, who the hell's going to take a punt on him in January? And in the summer, he's on big wages. You'd think that Rangers would want to command, I don't know, £1.5 million. Nobody's going to pay that.
No.
So then are you kind of in the situation where you're stuck with a player there for 3-4 seasons who isn't making the impact that you want, and he's also on big wages as well. So that's a worry for me when it comes to him.
Before we get into off-field stuff, there's one kind of final thing. Rangers resume play next Sunday, the 27th of November, away to Aberdeen. It's going to be an early preview of the Cup Final, but Rangers are going to have 12 games between then and the winter break, which is, I think the kind of winter break starts on the 3rd of January. That's a lot of games, and I know it's the same every year, but it's going to be a big test. Do you know what I mean? There's a chance to win a trophy in there. There's a lot of away games. I think Rangers go to Aberdeen, go to Hearts, go to Celtic. Obviously, 2 big European games as well. It's going to be a massive run of games, but this is going to be the test. This is going to be the progression, the next step. You've got players coming back. I think the likes of Raskin, even Dowell, Cifuentes, they can play huge parts when they come back.
Oh, Matondo as well.
Matondo,
who was looking decent. I mean, all these games coming up, I love it. This is why you support Rangers. All the big games constantly, 2 games, 3 games a week. Might not be great for the players and the conditioning that Philippe Clement wants, but from a fan's point of view, playing 3 games a week, I think it's brilliant. It's constant. Well, you hope it's constant entertainment. It'll be entertainment for one team or another anyway. But this is, as you say, Scott, the test. He's done well so far, but if he can get through this next this winter period, basically, then we really could be onto something special. Because for me, the targets that he has going into this game, of these group of games, are the same that he had in the last one. Well, to an extent, it's like come in, win the cup, get through in the Europa League, and cut the gap. He can do all that. He can still do all that. So tough games, tough teams, tough opponents. But it's doable. I think for me, the cup final mostly, that for me is
that's a big one.
that's the biggest one, because we need to get back to winning trophies.
Yeah.
End of story. And we've seen what winning that first cup of the season can do for the rest of the season, but also for sort of debut managers at Rangers and Celtic. But winning that first cup can do. We've seen it here with Alec McLeish. We've seen it with Postecoglou recently, a couple of years ago, with that done. And also as well, if Clement wins that League Cup next month, he is a winner straight away within 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you see all these all the time, Alistair Johnson's the best player in the world because he's won a treble in like 6 months or whatever. Like, that's the type of stuff that we could be coming out and saying about Phil Clement in the next few months. And then the whole thing just goes a whole 180. So if he comes in, he's already won a trophy within 2 months. If he wins that against Aberdeen, he's also so far done away with a bit of a mini Hampden hoodoo, because we've only won one game up until a couple of weeks ago. We'd only won one game in 12 years at Hampden in normal time in a league or a Scottish Cup game. And obviously managed to win in normal time against Hearts. That was an even more comfortable game than I thought. The other one was against Hearts like 4 years ago in the semi-final, which ironically was the other game that we won in normal time. But these are the challenges. In terms of the league is a very strange one because, look, I don't think there was a huge expectation on it becoming in and win the league, but I just don't think it's over yet. I really don't. I look at Celtic now. I mean, Celtic fans will say they just won 6-0 at the weekend. I'll say, aye, look who you were playing. Celtic, some of their performances this year have not been great. The thing that worries me, though, isn't so much about what Rangers do, it's about what the other teams do. Can the other teams make up points? Obviously, Hibs and St Johnstone have managed to do it, but that's it. I think if we can go into this after the derby, going into the winter break, I've said if we're 3 points behind, I'd be relatively comfortable with that. Maybe 4 if we can manage to beat Celtic. I think if you can beat Celtic, then that also sends out a statement. You know, if he's won a cup within 2 months and you beat Celtic in your first game, that kind of says, aye, this guy's here and he's a real deal. So hopefully he can get it all done. But for me, Scott, the League Cups, that's without question, he needs to win that. And do you know what? I'm nervous about the final. I was a bit nervous about the Hearts game, but I do genuinely think he will win it. So here's what he does.
That's going to be a massive step in terms of the Clement project. Few bits of kind of off-field stuff. We'll start with the kind of news that came out earlier this week. The accounts have dropped. Now, I'm not going to say, I don't think you and I are going to be the new banker in Deal or No Deal. I don't think we're that proficient in terms of accounts, but there's a wee bit of kind of thing we can read just to kind of to simplify it. Best way to, there's a lot better people who've kind of explained it better than I have, but just looking at the overall figures, just looking at the annual report, there's a slight drop in turnover from 86.8 to 83.8 this season. There's an operating profit of 252,000. However, there is a net loss of 4.2 million from amortisation, and there's an infrastructure investment of £15 million. And I would imagine that'd be something to do with Edmiston House. One thing that jumps out at me though is there's a lot of like the Bassi and Aribo money's in there, the Champions League money's in there, and there's still a net loss. Now, there's a lot of costs in there that I've tried to look at and my head is screwed, trying to read through it and try to make sense of it. But overall, I'll be honest and say, with what thinking of 2 managers being paid off in that time, I think it makes for decent reading. Now, it's not, any loss is not great, but it makes for decent reading for me that there's some sort of operating profit. And it's not a big one, but just looking at it in terms of the year Rangers have had, in terms of like Edmiston House being, I think, a lot of quite a bit over budget, I would say it's probably a good sum of accounts this year.
Well, I think Kieran Maguire summed it up perfectly earlier this week when he said the results are quite boring. And that's when you know they're good.
Yeah.
When accounting results are boring, that means they're good. I mean, like the headlines that people will take from it is obviously all profit and loss. You've made this what you've like. When it comes to business and football, does that stuff really, more so football, does that stuff really matter?
Mm-hmm.
No owner's going into football to make money because it's kind of, you're not going to make money from football. For me, the turnover is the sort of thing that that stands out for me. And I think the fact that for the second year in a row now, we've seen turnover of upwards of 80 million shows that in terms of going out and actual bringing money in, Rangers are doing what they can, and it's, I think, doubled pretty much turnover in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. We're getting to that point now, Scott, though, where I think you're talking maybe between 80 and 100 million is probably the most in terms of turnover that Rangers can expect to make. I think Celtic hit 100 this year or last year, which is a record for them. Now, they've obviously been in the Champions League 2 years in a row, and they've got 10,000 more seats in their stadium, and that's for selling big players every year as well. So, considering Rangers, haven't really been doing that as well, and there's only one big player selling there, really, it's actually quite decent in terms of turnover. We're probably at the maximum we can get to. So I say that, they are quite boring. I mean, the infrastructure cost is there. Edmondson House, which I think is a good investment. Kind of had this debate with a few people who maybe say that the money could have been spent elsewhere. I don't really agree with that, because I think if you look at the actual funding of Edmondson House, it was funded mostly from loans from directors. In terms of financial fair play regulation, you can't just get John Bennett to give you a £10 million loan so you can go on a splurge in the transfer market. It doesn't work like that. You need to find ways of bringing money in the long term. And if Edmondson House does, make £1 million profit every year, the way that I see it is that is a pretty important first team players' wages every season paid for. So I think in that respect it is a good investment, and it's also giving something back to the fans as well, in a facility that we can use. But I think the biggest issue for me isn't so much the business side of the club, it's the football side. The reason that we've made a £4 million overall loss is quite frankly because we've signed duds in the transfer market the last 12 months, and we've also sacked 2 managers. If you take that out of the equation, we're doing really well. Thankfully we won't be doing that every year, but at the end of the day, if you take Celtic's major sales out of their accounts, they'll be making a loss as well. So both clubs are now at a point where you need to basically sell a big player every year to make a profit. But I think they're quite boring, as Kieran Maguire said. And I'm pretty confident in terms of the business side of things anyway, the club's being run in a fairly prudent manner, and we're certainly not going to go down what sort of we went down before. But I think if we can get the footballing department sorted out, obviously let's talk about the director of football.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. That seems to be that was a kind of big thing to take away from the kind of overall Bennett's statement was about a sporting director coming in potentially in the next few weeks. I think this is probably as big an appointment as a manager right now, because the last sporting director I thought was a great appointment when he came in. He didn't turn out to be what I thought he was. You need now to go to that route, and there's been chat like Man United been a perfect example. Man United as a club are an absolute disaster right now, but you're hearing in the past few days like a positive change in terms of their sporting director, and it can just make all the difference if you bring in somebody who's right for the job, knows what he wants to do, can work well with the manager. That could be the big turning point, and I think this appointment is crucial.
No, it is. I mean, it's one as well, the sporting director, where it's the same with every appointment at Rangers. You need to remember that we're appointing a sporting director at Rangers. It's no like it has been at any, or it will be at any other club. And we've obviously spoke about Ross Wilson. I mean, Ross Wilson's defence will be that he made Rangers money.
Yeah.
And when you look at the cold light of day, he did make Rangers money. But as a Rangers fan, you don't care about how much money you're making, you care about success in the park. And if you don't deliver that, then you're ultimately deemed a failure. So I think that's kind of where they need to look at. Obviously, the club need to look from a financial point of view. How are they going to bring in a sporting director that can oversee a profitable football operation, but also a successful one as well? And in terms of names and stuff like that, genuinely, I have not got a clue. I do not have a clue. There's that many sporting directors out there, like even guys like Paul Mitchell, that people are talking about, who a lot of people say, "Oh, did you do my appointment?" I'd never heard of the guy.
I think there's no chance of him
coming. Oh no, there's no. But that's the thing. I'd never even heard of the guy up until about a month ago. I've got a mate called Paul Mitchell who's a Celtic fan. I thought it was him they were talking about. But people like this is what I mean. It's like you've got guys in these roles now who have never done anything. Like obviously they're football fans and all that, but they've not been involved in like playing or coaching or managing or whatever. So we just need to hope that the board get this one right. It'll be interesting to see if they take advice off the manager for it. If they look at maybe Graham Souness having a wee part to play in whoever comes in. I really don't know. I think whoever comes in, we're just going to have to see how they do. But in terms of like judging them and all that, and it's weird because it is a massive appointment, but we won't know the fruits of the results until a long time into the future. And you know, at least when a manager comes in, you've kind of got a reasonable idea about whether they'll be successful or not.
Yeah.
I just think with a sporting director, it's going to be a wee bit, you know, we'll see what happens, and hopefully they do a good job, whoever it is that comes in. It's just that my sort of lack of understanding around potential candidates is probably going to deter me from going, oh, aye, this guy, whoever's been appointed, this is a great appointment. At the end of the day, we'll know they're a good appointment a year or so into the future when actual results can come their way.
Yeah. We did see as well some appointments in terms of a fan advisory board. Now, just reading the kind of overall kind of press release on this, these people were appointed. I'm just going to name them: Fad Barry, Matt Boyd, Jamie Cook, Craig Hanna, Kelly Johnson, Stuart Langan, and Gary Ralston. I have to say Gary Ralston's the only name I recognise out of that. These guys have been brought in terms of a fan advisory board. They will provide vital input and guidance on key club matters and policies. There will be meetings with senior club management at regular intervals with the inaugural members of the FAB. And that's a testament to our committed to meaningful and structured engagement with the Rangers support. Now, this is something I've been saying for a long time, that the club need to be more engaging with the support, and there needs to be a better level of communication. I don't know what this, like, I don't know the background of any of these guys. I just know Gary Ralston used to work for the Daily Record. That's the only thing I know about this fan advisory board. But what's your kind of thoughts on this? Like, is this going to be a big thing? Because my worry with something like this is, and it's something I've implemented in the past with fans who end up in the boardroom. Some of them can take it as they're getting a suit, therefore they are big players. Now, that's not the way we've spoken about people who've done that in the past. But these guys have got a big opportunity because they're essentially going to be the middle between the fans and the board. And I think you do need people there who have the right intentions. And I think it's important that these guys do. But my worry would be, if you're doing something like this, could these guys take it as, do you know what I mean? Take it to their head gets a bit bigger because they're now official Rangers kind of board members as such. At least I think they'll be. But again, I'm not speaking. I don't know anything about their character, but that would be my concern with anything like this.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from, and I'm kind of inclined to agree. And look, when I seen the names, the first thing I do when I see, I try and Google people and stuff like that. This, that, and the next thing. Ralston, like yourself, is the only person that I've heard of. Looking at the other people briefly, it seems that there is a theme between each person in the sense that they come from a pretty professional background in whatever industry it is they work in. So they're people that are pretty experienced in different industries. You know, they've got good jobs, great careers, and stuff like that. And obviously they're Rangers fans. I think maybe that point that, you know, we only know one of them, is that maybe something that's a negative? Because I think in terms of this is about communication and engagement, you know, I know obviously people think, oh, you're talking about maybe one or two certain individuals here, but like, would it have not been a wee bit better for the club to get people that are more well known in terms of people that actually communicate with the fans? And I'm not saying that the route that they've went down is the right one or the wrong one. Again, we'll just sort of need to see what happens in the future. But if it is about the communication and engagement with fans, surely you need to be doing it with people that are already communicating and engaging with the fans. For me, that's kind of a natural step. So I do find it rather strange that the people that have been chosen, to the best of my knowledge anyway, aren't really ones that have done that on a large scale anyway. So I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, what is for certain anyway is that it was an application process that people had to go through, kind of like a job interview.
Yeah.
And obviously the sort of profile of people that they're picked, as I say, it's professional people that have done really well in their working lives, their careers, etc. But then it's kind of like, what about your sort of your neighbour Davy, the mad one? Like, who's going to do I look at somebody on the board and that fan board and think they're going to represent, the average sort of Rangers fan?
Yeah.
Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. Time will tell. But I do think it would have been a bit better for the people that appointed these guys to kind of go, well, look at the people that are already communicating with fans. Look at people that are maybe already in similar unofficial positions and think, well, we could maybe have just done with them being on the board as well. But obviously the club have made this decision. We'll see what happens sort of in the short, medium and long term with it. And, if it doesn't work out, we'll definitely be the first people to tell the board
Yeah.
about it anyway. So
That's for certain. Yeah, that's for certain. But it's something that I think will obviously be interesting to see how that develops. Final point before we wrap up. There was a bit of controversy over the week in regards to the Viaplay Cup Final tickets. Now, I don't know if you've seen this, Craig. I'd imagine you would have. Aberdeen are investigating social media claims that Rangers fans have bought some of the Pittodrie club's allocation. I don't know what's happened here. What I think's happened is that Aberdeen have opened their sale to any Aberdeen fan, and Rangers fans have thought, here's an opportunity to get a ticket. And to be honest, I don't have much sympathy for Aberdeen if that's what they've done, because surely in this day and age, that was inevitable that something like that was going to happen if you open that up to a general sale. Surely is that just me, or is that I just can't get my head round that they've done that.
well, I've got 6 tickets, so if anybody's wanting one, give me a shout. I'll sell it to you for double the price if any actual Aberdeen fans want one. Like the whole thing's been a farce from the beginning. The thing that really gripes me, and I tweeted about this the other day, is that Aberdeen have essentially opened their ticket sales to anyone, stopping actual Aberdeen fans from getting a ticket to the final first, just so that they can make a political point. Aberdeen put up the sort of initial sort of season ticket holder window only for like 7 or 8 hours or something like that, and then as soon as that with 7 or 8 hours was over, they opened the door to anyone. Now, when I say anyone, I literally mean anyone, as in from what people have said and what it seems, anyone could have went onto that website, created an account, and bought however many tickets they wanted, up to 4. I think Aberdeen done that because they knew people would buy tickets, regardless of who they were going to be, whether it's Aberdeen fans or otherwise, just so that they could turn around and say that they've sold out their tickets.
See, this is the
Because let's
problem
be
with this,
honest,
though.
that was the only way that they were going to do it.
Yeah, this is the problem, and I said this at the time. This was going to be the big problem with this. Now, I've been of the position, and I'm always, and I don't. This might get me unpopular with certain people. I don't know, but I've always of the opinion is if there's an option to make it a 50-50 split, try it. If it doesn't work, whoever's bought more, get more, because that's the way it should be done. You can have an option of a 50-50 split. Now, if Aberdeen were to sell that the right way, I wouldn't have an issue with it. But looking at this, they haven't done that. As you say, they've opened it up to certain. Now, I would always be of the opinion season ticket holders should always get first access, because they're the guys that go. They're the men and women, children that go every single week. They should always get first priority. Now, I don't know how many season ticket holders Aberdeen have, but I would say it's probably in the 10,000 region. I don't know.
Yeah,
9,000,
10,000, yeah.
They should have first access to those tickets. And if they say if every single person buys a ticket from there, that's up to them. Then goes to other Aberdeen fans who are members of things that don't have a season ticket. What you don't do is open them to a general sale just to sell the tickets to say we should have got more. That's the reason that people think this is a farce, because stuff like this happens. Now, I would have said try and get a 50-50 split. If Aberdeen don't sell the full allocation, Rangers get more tickets. That's the way it should have been done. That's what a normal chief executive operating body would have thought of, but not the SPFL, and people know my opinion on that. But for this, I think it's an absolute disgrace. I think it's a stupid nonsense, but it's Scottish football, it's the SPFL, it's always going to be this way.
I mean, it could only have happened in Scottish football. I do take your point on about the whole 50-50 split, and I do tend to agree that if you can make it a 50-50 split for a final, fair enough. However, I do think that there's been too many examples in the past of not just Aberdeen fans, but Hearts fans, basically teams that are on the Rangers or Celtic, not selling out their handing
No, I
allocations
get
for
that.
finals, semi-finals, whatever. So for me, I'm kind of the opinion the Aberdeen fans even deserve the chance to sell this out 50-50 because they've no bothered to do it in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, all the times that they've been to Hampden. So why should you? You need to think of it from an operational point of view, right? So, all right, let's say Rangers get 30,000 seats, Aberdeen get 20,000 seats, right? Sorry, we done it 50. Sorry, we'll say we do it 50-50 at the start. Rangers sell all 25,000. Aberdeen can only sell 10,000, right? Let's say Aberdeen get the tickets back to Rangers, like I don't know, a week, 2 weeks before the final. Rangers will sell those tickets out.
Yeah,
The problems that it comes from is from a sort of policing and stewarding point of view, where the police will need to know at least a month in advance how many fans of each club are going to be there. The police just can't turn around and say a week before a game's going to happen, especially a Rangers Aberdeen game, right? Where you're going to have barriers and a higher police presence than if it was, say, Rangers against Hearts. So the police are going to need to know weeks, if not a month at least in advance, of who's sitting where, what fans are going to be here, what's their entrances, this, that, and the next thing. Because if it turns out maybe a week before the game that all Rangers all of a sudden are getting an extra 10,000 tickets, the entire policing operation needs
yeah,
to change. They need to get guys in with different police forces, paying them overtime, this, that, and the next thing, which ultimately costs the taxpayer money as well.
yeah.
So that's why the kind of the limits have been set. And I maintain that this 15,000 or whatever that have been sold so far, I'd say you'd be lucky if 10,000 of them are actually Aberdeen fans. I think there's a good chunk of those 15,000, I'd say at least a third, that are Rangers fans, maybe just guys that want a ticket to the cup final, however they don't support anyone. There's people that I've heard saying, oh, well, you needed an AB postcode to get a ticket, you need to go and collect it at Pittodrie. Aye, because Rangers fans don't have any fans in the north east of Scotland. There's probably more Rangers fans in Aberdeen at this point now than there is
Yeah.
Aberdeen fans. So people find ways to get around it. I think one big thing that could happen from it, and this will all be of Aberdeen's making, if there is thousands of Rangers supporters that have bought briefs for there and it becomes a security concern, that's on Aberdeen for releasing their tickets to anyone to buy instead of going through the right channels. And the reason Aberdeen have done it is because they knew they wouldn't sell out. They wanted to find a way to sell out at all costs, just so that they can turn around and say, oh, Neil Doncaster, we told you so, we sold out. Because Alan Burrows and Dave Cormack, within 20 minutes of these seats selling out, were already making tweets saying, oh, aye, well, it's a shame we should have got a 50-50 split because this proves that we would have sold out. Absolute nonsense. They've done it for political reasons. And in doing that, ironically, they've actually annoyed their own fans. So,
Not just annoyed their own fans, but ran a potential safety risk, because if there's Rangers
yeah,
fans and with
exactly.
Aberdeen fans, and it could instigate, do you know what I mean? Anything could happen. So I just think it's a ridiculous decision. I thought it was ridiculous when I first heard it. Before I even thought that, oh, Rangers, when I heard it was a general sale, I'm thinking this is only going to go one way, and I didn't think it would be almost instantly as bad as what it is. But this could potentially be a major. The main thing I'm looking at is this could be a safety issue.
Yeah, and
And
if it is, Scott, let me be very clear about it. It's Aberdeen's fault, and you will get stories in the next few weeks if it does transpire that to be the case. That Rangers fans shouldn't be buying ticket in the home end. This, that, and the next thing. No, if there's problems that come about this, it's entirely of Aberdeen's own making.
yeah, no, I'd agree
because
with that. I think it's
because
just I think it's setting
it's their own
ourselves up
fault.
for a massive problem. But we've spent a lot of time talking about Rangers, Craig. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. It's going to be a big month, and it's been great to have you on, mate. I really appreciate it. It's always pleasure.
No, it's been absolutely brilliant. Good to talk about positive things about Rangers for a
Good.
change.
It's good to get have a kind of decent feeling watching Rangers again. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in. Please subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channel, and we'll be back after the Aberdeen game with a post-match reaction and the Rangers Assessment podcast. We'll see you all soon. Cheers.